Do you know a veteran in need? Nation's Finest, through the VA's Supportive Services for Veteran Families program, helps veterans and their families struggling with rent, employment, and other housing-related costs. Today, Nation's Finest operates more than 30 locations in California, Arizona, and Nevada, helping thousands of veterans every year. Visit nationsfinest.org or call 1-833-468-9676. That's 1-833-468-9676.
You can stop the search for something intellectual and fulfilling. You've tuned into the Diary of a Bald Man, and there is no going back. Let the moaning, groaning, and bitching begin in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hey everybody, thank you for joining us. Today my name's Alan Woffard, and I'm the host and creator of the Diary of a Bald Man. So what you're going to hear today is not going to be one of our normal episodes that we're putting out. Due to suggestions and advice that came in while I was overseas in the Marshall Islands, we're actually going to have guest hosts from Revoicer and other platforms conducting interviews for the show. Now, today's interview is around podcasting. When I first started this series after shutting down the Dragging 6.0 series, people wanted to know, why did you get into it? How did you get into it? Cost and associated things like that. So our guest host for today, Edith, will ask me questions from the numerous emails that have come in, through the Mind in Constant Motion page, but now the Diary of a Bald Man. So as we go through this will not answer everybody's questions. We're probably going to have to break this particular series into 2 or 3 just from the volume. As you go through the weeks, we'll have other stuff coming up, especially about holidays, cooking, culinary, society, culture, everything that makes up the mindset that I have. Now, as you know, we're getting into the holiday season, so let's prepare our mindsets for that. That may sound like a strange thing because so many people say, well, the holidays are great. Not for everybody. There's a lot of people out there, empty nesters, old retired persons, young people who are distant from family. I mean, think about people in the construction industry, transportation, things like that. They're going to be distant, right? So we have to worry about the mindset, because while we may be enjoying the holidays, culturally, because that's what we do, we got to think about the impact, both emotionally and physically, on our bodies. Because we're going to be eating and taking in things we normally don't do throughout the year. You're going to have turkey. Yeah, you could have that at Easter, Christmas, New Year's. There's a variety of different things that people eat and consume. So your body's trying to, break this material down. You get tryptophan, large amounts of carbs, large amounts of sugars. So physically, you may have some issues with that, indigestion, bloating, things where your body's trying to break down everything you just stuck inside your fucking throat in that short period of time. Another thing that increases outside depression for a lot of people is the consumption of alcohol during the holidays. We're going to parties, we're going to after parties. There's a variety of things, especially the closer we get to New Year's. So you're beating the shit out of your liver too. Think about this. We're getting ready to travel. We're going to pack our pillows, pack our fans, get our Viagra, get all the stuff that we're going to take to make this as enjoyable as possible. But when you're consuming alcohol, and again, you're consuming carbs and sugars and things like that, your liver's going to get the shit kicked out of it. So grab you some milk thistle, grab you some liver support, but check with your primary care physician if you're under any kind of medication to make sure that it's safe for you, to make sure that you're not going to worsen your signs and symptoms of whatever vascular or, other issues you may have going on. Prepare. You're going to look at a map, you're going to program your GPS, prepare your body, hydrate more, right? You're going to need more water because if we're consuming foods and stuff like that, we have to pass that through our body. Take more vitamin C, take L-lysine, things that reduce the calcium buildup in your arteries after you check with your primary care physician. And your primary care physician is not fucking Google, okay? Forget that. All right, so we're getting you ready for the mindset of the holidays, getting you ready for the travel and being involved with family, because they'll fucking drive you nuts. God damn, they will. There's no doubt in that. I love my family, but I know I drive them fucking nuts too, because it's like, get your feet off the fucking table. I don't want to see another football game right now. This should be family time. But it is what it is. We all make up our environment, and we need the chaos to have and balance out the happiness. You have to have it. It's going to happen. Shit's going to happen. It's the fucking holidays. Live with it. Watch movies. Enjoy the people around you. We don't have forever, so take it as you have it now. Okay, I think that's enough to get it started. Edith, if you would at this time, take a moment to introduce yourself. Again, Edith is our co-host today. Daniel is out working the hotlines for suicide awareness during the holidays. So again, psychological background. Edith, thank you, and I'll hand it over to you now.
Hi, everyone. I'm Edith Waters, today's co-host for this series, Inside the Mind of the Bald Man, coming to you from sunny Tucson, Arizona. I'm passionate about education and love supporting single parents as they navigate the exciting, yet challenging world of starting their own small businesses. When I'm not behind the mic lecturing students on exploring a variety of cultures and documenting their experiences in a journal for responsible tourism, you can find me trying to perfect my version of Red Lobster recipes, working on my latest wood carving projects, or cheering at a local rodeo. I'm thrilled to be here and can't wait to dive into all the questions and conversations we have lined up for you. Alan, is there anything you want to add before we begin?
Yeah, Edith, my apologies, and I know for a fact now that you were unaware. So we changed the series name from Inside the Mind of the Bald Man to just Inside the Bald Man now. So I apologize that didn't come out, and emails are just not my forte. So that I just wanted to put that out. Thank you, ma'am, for the introduction. Look forward to working with you. And if you're ready, go ahead and start with your first line of questioning as it relates to podcasts.
So, Alan, if you are ready, let's get started with the first question. Newland from Oakwood, Georgia, wants to know what is your favorite porn genre and why?
Holy shit. Okay, well, that's not a question I thought would come up for a podcasting session. I mean, Jesus Christ. Just because I'm in that age group of dirty old men does not mean that I personally watch any porn. I don't sit around and watch porn. What I might on occasionally do is to glance at it rather quickly, 5, 12 minutes, something like that. And if there was a genre that I was interested in, it would probably be like amateur outdoor stuff, because being out in nature and things like that, I mean, Jesus, fuck. I think we need to focus, Edith, and just stay within the parameters of podcasting. How about we try that?
Look, you dirty old man. These were vetted, and the common information started with a P and O, same as podcast. You might need to find Jesus and not worry about questions out of order.
No, you're right. Sometimes things get out of order. I do it to myself all the time. Well, I'll be doing a podcast, so I'll be starting on something and then somehow segue into something else. But yeah, you need to prepare a motherfucker for things like that. I did not see that in the queue. I didn't even know that would be one of the questions. So my apologies if you and the voiceover team got thrown off because of my rant on that. But, I mean, everybody has questions. We do want to cover everybody, but I would like to stick to the subject at hand, and I appreciate you getting me back on track. And I probably do resemble that remark of the dirty old man, but I think that actually starts at age 21. But okay, Edith, I stand corrected. Let's get on, and please send in the next question.
Moving right along, Philip from Moses Lake, California asks, what are the essential software tools you recommend for recording and editing a podcast, and why?
Now that's what I'm talking about. That was a perfect representation of the kind of questions that I thought would be asked for this series. Not that there isn't somewhere for things like sexual health, porn, only bald, things like that. But that is an outstanding question, Philip. So my personal preference, the thing I love the most, I found through research. Now, others may tell you use Adobe products, but you have price points with that. I use this free audio editor called Audacity. It's Audacity. City. And I mean, you could do everything for Mac, you could do everything for Windows. They have great video support on YouTube. You can ask questions within the groups. There's constantly being updates. Other people generate software that work in tandem with Audacity. But for me, I like being able to go into the effects and being able to silence, to change the voice pattern, to add and clip and edit otherwise. I mean, there's so much you could do. I can't even begin to tell you everything because I've not used it all, not even a third. But it's free, open source, and it works great. I just absolutely love it, and I think you would too. You ought to download it, practice recording, use some of the special effects, use some of the analyzers and tools, and just see what you like. And I think you'll be happy with that. Great question.
Philip, we hope that helps. Next, we have Josh from Titusville, Illinois. Wants to know, can you share your experience with specific hosting platforms and how they've supported your podcast growth?
That's a really good question in itself as well. So to answer that, Josh, when I first started and I was looking at what was out there, what was available, because I didn't want to put a lot of money into something I didn't know was going to be successful or not. And that's not what you should do. If you have some finances, you got some wiggle room for that, and you want to try something a little bit more advanced, depending on if you do like visual or audio or something like that. But when I started, it was on a platform called Anchor, Anchor FM. Anchor FM got bought out, and now it's Spotify. And I like the Spotify platform. I liked Anchor platform. I liked it a lot. Excuse me. But Spotify now has Spotify for creators. So, Google Spotify creators. But the way it helped me grow, it gave me analytics. And what that analytics did, it provided me with when my listeners were more active. It would give me breakdowns on male over female over not identified, because, not everybody has an account like on Spotify, iTunes, things like that. They just may be listening to a show that somebody posted a link to, they got into it. So it didn't have that analytical information on the listener. So by seeing the time, seeing the dates, looking at the genders of people that were listening or possibly listening, I can modify the show. And the way I did that, I found out through a lot of research and through my analytics, like for society and culture related shows like mine is, but it also got listed as comedy. Most of the listeners will be Wednesday morning during commute times. So, that's one of the reasons I stuck with this after my old podcast, Dragging Up 6.0, and stuck with the Wednesday format, because Monday people are catching up with news and traffic as they're going to work. They may also be listening to other shows that come out like on Sundays, but at that time they're on their personal time, because of that work-life balance. So Monday they'll listen to it while they're on the drive. Tuesday, it's not really a great day for people with podcasts to put out, because Tuesdays are release dates for like a lot of different show sources, Netflix, Amazon, all the new stuff comes out. So people will listen to shows or things that attribute to what's coming out today. And Wednesday drive time between 5 and 9 a.m. had the highest amount of listeners. Right now, I'm looking at the analytics on the show. For Illinois is number 5 out of all the states. It's telling me which state has the most listeners. It breaks it down by cities, by towns. And it won't tell you how many people are listening in each city and each town, but it gives you a good representation of who's listening and where. The United States, my top listening right now is Washington, followed by California. Florida also has a high number. It tells me what platforms, like, is it heard more on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Pandora, or others. So you got a lot of information to help you guide and build your show. Really good question. That's not something a lot of people think of, and I didn't think about the analytics when I first started. But when the data started coming in as the shows played, it helped me produce better shows. Edith, great. What do you got for me next?
Our next question comes from Todd in El Paso, Texas. When you are recording the shows, how are you able to swear so often and still get it posted? Are you not concerned about being canceled or worse?
Hey, Todd in El Paso, just to give you a little bit of background, I was actually stationed out there at Fort Bliss one time. First time I ever had Whataburger, and first time I ever had scorpion bites. I mean, it was a unique experience, and I hope Whataburger's still the same. I'm sure the El Paso area has changed so much since I've been out there. So, to answer your question, once I go in, and it's a good question because, everybody's like, oh, he uses freedom of speech, things like that. No, when you load anything onto a hosting platform, it could be YouTube, it could be the old Anchor, now Spotify for creators. On every one of them, when you're putting your stuff in, it asks you about the content. And you have to switch on that, there may be adult language. There could be things, is it for kids? Is it not for kids? And what they'll do is they'll limit. So like if you're 18 years old, or excuse me, say you're 16 years old, you set up your profile, it will block my content from showing up into your feed. Same thing with YouTube. They're very strict about that. And they ask you, is this generated for children? And if it's not, or does it contain language, you need to click on that. You don't want to be liable for kids getting in and saying things, and you've got, content that kids should not be listening to. Now I even warn grandparents and others, hey, this stuff is not safe for work, and on the podcast cover, I have a warning label for explicit content. So that pops up. They know that Alan's talking shit again. But it is a good question. Outside of your rights and liberties and things like that, you also have a responsibility when you share this to give people warning. Hey, this has got some mature content. Throw your kids outside. Tell your husband, hey, don't be on the phone while I'm playing this. But it's really important to know. No, I'm not going to get canceled. If I got canceled, it'd be for some stupid racial remark or, something hateful. That's why I do not bring politics or religion into my shows. I may talk about them in historical content, but no, I try to moderate that. And I swear, people swear all the time. You can watch TV shows now where the content is such where they have to put a little disclaimer, hey, adult content, adult language, smoking, strobing lights, things like that for different types of sensitivity. Good question. Yeah, just if you go to load your shows, it'll ask you some information and ask you to switch on that it's safe for everybody or restricted. Thank you. Edith, we're rolling right along. I'm liking what we've got. I know we got hundreds more, but what do we have for this current episode? Please go ahead.
Next, we have a question from Marshall out of Gary, Indiana, who asks, what compelled you to podcast instead of writing a book or blogging?
Marshall, that is a really good question, and I'm glad you asked it because it gives me a moment to talk about an old type of communication thing that I used to enjoy. So back in the day, they had what was called books on tape. I don't know how young or mature you are, but when I would travel cross country as a consultant or as a trainer or as a contractor, I love books. I'm a voracious reader, but books would get heavy. So I had my Walkman, which is kind of like I don't know how to tell you this, again, not knowing your age, but it was a tape player. It was a portable tape player. And I would get books on tape. And, the manner that the person spoke to when they'd read the book, I always enjoyed that. I actually thought of doing that, doing voiceovers for books and putting it out there for people that, may be legally blind or visually impaired, things like that, that also had a passion for books. And as for books or blogging, I actually have started 9 different books. The first was going to be, and it was based off my first podcast, Dragging Up 6.0, about different things I saw as a contractor and traveling around the globe. I tried the blogging, doing the content and stuff, trying to put things down and then editing it and then seeing where to put it. I had a hard time. Same as with my book, I type it up, get a great idea. To me, conceptually, it was great. It was interesting, but I just didn't know what to do with it. I may still work on the books, especially the one I'm currently working on, which is called Growing Old Disgracefully. Because there is no grace in getting old. I mean, you're fighting this shit day in, day out. But good question. So if you ever get a chance, And again, I don't know your age. Look up books on tape. And again, I thought it'd be a popular format because you could go to any truck stop, and into a lot of libraries and pick these up. And I just thought it was one of the coolest ways of communicating. Great question, Marshall. Thank you. And please, if you have any more questions, send them in. All right, Edith, what do we got next, ma'am?
This question comes from Lyle out of San Antonio, Texas. Alan, what happened to your first podcast, Dragging Up 6.0? That was the very first podcast I ever listened to after working with you on the Samsung project in South Carolina.
Hey, Lyle, good to hear from you, brother. I saw on Facebook a couple of weeks back about the grandbaby getting elected as one of the cutest faces on the internet. Hey, congratulations to you and your family. Dragging Up 6.0. We were really building up in notoriety, but what was occurring, we spread all over Spotify. Next thing I knew, iTunes, and we had a great following. We had some really good people lined up for interviews, but life just got in the way. Betty was going into the oil and gas industry, so she had a lot of traveling and being out of town. JR was just getting uncomfortable being in Illinois. He was doing everything he could to get back overseas and work because, that's the way it is for some of us, especially if you're a contractor. You get set to certain things. You're used to certain types of dynamics. And JR at that time was going out to Wake Island. So we didn't know, because when I was on Wake Island, the only way you could get out on internet was through dial-up. They didn't have cell service, so it would have been really difficult to connect with him at that time, to record the podcast, to get everybody on the clean feed or Rivers, depending on which one we were using at that time. But with both of the co-hosts, JR leaving and departing, and Betty getting involved in things, we couldn't keep that dynamic. That made us so popular. It started out with just me, and then getting JR involved because of his background in radio and country music. Betty was just an awesome co-host. She's funny as hell and a safety person too. But that's all that happened. It wasn't meant to be at the time, so it didn't stick around. But it's great to see that so many people, I still see the downloads for it on Spotify and some of the other platforms because it's where it's connected to me. But it was just, we were all meant to go and do different things at that time. Good question. I hope you're doing well, brother. Happy Thanksgiving, and I'll see you on Facebook. Good question. All right, Miss Edith, who's next up on the block?
The next two-part question is from Honolulu, Hawaii. Courtesy of Paulette. Can platforms like Fiverr help podcasters with tasks such as graphic design, audio editing, or writing show notes? Second, what should podcasters look for when hiring freelancers on Fiverr or similar platforms to ensure a good fit?
That is another great question. So just to let you know, Paulette, if you listen to my intros and some of the materials from my other show on the Diary of a Bald Man series, the voice you hear reading that and doing my intros, my outros, and my disclaimer is a gentleman, a famous radio broadcaster by the name of Keith Kramer that also does voiceovers. He does a lot of work for the podcast community. And the way I found him, just to give you some idea, when you get onto Fiverr and you're setting up an account, when you go to search, it'll have things like podcasts. It'll have intros, drops, show notes. It'll have people that do all kinds of work for you. But I found Keith Kramer that way. And the way I knew he was a great fit, anybody that does any type of audio on there, they put sample clips, whether it be music, the drops, the intros, the hangers, things like that, and you listen to them. And I knew he had the voice, so I started communicating through the Fiverr network. And I would send him, hey, I'm doing this kind of podcast. It's snarky, it's sarcastic, humor, I swear. And this is the kind of thing I'd like to have. So he would do the drops, he would do the intros, all the stuff, and send it to me. And you pay, depending on what level you paid for the intros or the drops and things like that. They'd say, hey, we'll do like 2 changes or 2 updates. So you had to be careful and really think about what you wanted that individual to do. And I'm just talking about audio. For the other stuff, it's the same way. You can go to that individual producer's page and look at all the people that rated them. You'll see 5-star, 4-star. And Keith is such a dynamic, a great personality. You'll even see where people gave him lower stars, or others like him lower stars, and said, well, this is the content I wanted, this is the music. And it all goes into how you describe what you want done. And then if they don't meet, those goals or those target levels, then, you pay for nothing except disappointment. You get that enough in life without having to pay for it. But yeah, there's all kinds of stuff. But the best way to find out if they're for you, listen to the samples if you're looking for audio support. Look at the reviews that they get. Like with Keith Kramer, I didn't just look him up on Fiverr because we discussed where he was into radio journalism, broadcasting and all. And he popped up all over the fucking globe. I mean, just great voice, great personality. He's done quite a few drops and intros for me because I had actually started another podcast series called Two Vets. It was going to be veteran based, but it was a flop, but not because of anybody but me. I couldn't get the backing for it. But by backing, I'm talking about listenership and stuff, because that's how I found out about Sean Ryan. They said, well, are you trying to do like Sean Ryan? I said, who the fuck is Sean Ryan? Not in a disrespectful way, but why had I not heard that before? Well, because I wasn't looking for podcasts. But I hope that helps you. Yes, ma'am, Fiverr can be beneficial. But for artwork, I use Canva, Canva. I can upload pictures of myself, which I do. I can erase backgrounds, and there's all kinds of training on it. But I used their professional one for, I think, 2-3 years. But I can do the exact same thing with the free. But you just have more options if you do the paid. It is not expensive. But for all my visual graphics and stuff, I use Canva. I don't outsource that because what I'd see for like podcast covers on Fiverr, it just didn't fit my persona. You may find something that fits you perfectly, but for what I was looking for dark humor, shit that, may offend or excite people, I had to do it myself because only I could see what was in my mind. I couldn't descriptively put it out there. Great question. Fiverr will help you. I do warn you, if you're going to do a podcast show or anything else, be very wary of the people that say they're marketing you. I have seen numerous podcasters put in for things, and they would get like thousands of downloads on iTunes and stuff. But what was great, iTunes and other platforms saw that these people were just outsourcing fake stuff and have multiple people make downloads on all these fake accounts, and they do these fake social media things, and you thought you were getting something good, and then all of a sudden your followers, your listeners, all your what you thought were really outstanding, reviews and everything disappeared because they found out they were robots. So please use care and caution. I don't know how to tell you the best way to market except through your friends, your associates, social organizations you may be part of, your church groups, unless you swear a lot like me. You don't want to let that know in your church group. They already know. Good question. All right, Miss Edith, wasn't expecting a 2-part, but we got to cover both, art, podcast covers, things like that. So that was a good question. All right, ma'am, what do you have for us next?
Moving on to Taylor from Vallejo, California. He wanted to ask about the purpose for including music in the first half of the show, and how do you get the permission from the artist for its use?
Hey, Taylor, that's an interesting question. So the idea behind the music and, breaking up the show in the manner that I do actually comes from television and my experience as a trainer. So most people will hold an audience for maybe 10, 15 minutes, not because they're losing interest, but if they feel like a show is going on, they're kind of losing interest. So they put in, maybe an advertisement, something like that. And it refocuses you because, you're going, let's say you're watching Landman. Great show come out right now, right? But they break up a dramatic scene with an advertisement for like Digel or, something that would be based on the representation of people watching at that time, people that's engrossed into the show. So you see that, you're ready to get right back to it. So that's where the idea came from. The way that I've got the rights to do this, so you can get different types of memberships. Like my music comes from two sources. One is Camtasia, the second is Artlist. And so what it is, those are royalty-free music or soundtracks or audio bites that the artist will get some type of compensation from, but allows the public, radio broadcast stations, podcasters, the ability to put something in. So let's say you're listening to the podcast and say, hey, we'll be back after this mental health moment. That's exactly what it is. If I'm saying something or speaking on something that may be, controversial or something like that, that break, that pause going into music and different harmonics and different frequencies kind of like gets that tension off. It gets that emotional thing off. And then as we restart, we reintroduce who I am. We're here for the podcast and then segue into the show. So it's just as it's intended to be, a mental break from the show. Takes your mind off you trying to focus, especially if you're driving, right? You're trying to listen to every word being said, things like that. Trying to find yourself within the show or something that resonates within you. And that's the idea. And it works really well. When you get into podcasting, if you sign up for Spotify, Spotify will allow you to pick certain music to embed into your thing, but only for a small portion of time. And I didn't like that. I didn't think it was long enough for a mental reboot. So I looked at royalty-free and, Camtasia, both with its assets and Artlist. You do pay a membership for it, but, it adds something new to your show that not everybody has. So if you're watching videos, a video podcast, let's say Sean Ryan, he talks about gold and investments. He talks about child insurance for kids, different things, and it matches up with his listener base, right? So those of us coming out of the military, we're looking at retirement things. We may have young children. How do we protect them? How do we get insurance for them? So you try to build it based off the analytics you get for your listeners, where they're at, what music's popular for that time frame. We have Christmas coming up, so we'll have Christmas things intertwined within the shows. But a good question, and again, it's royalty-free music. I specifically use Artlist.io and Camtasia assets. I appreciate your question. If you have anything else or you'd like more information, please email me at diaryofabaldman1968@gmail.com, and I'll walk you through and actually show you mine if you're interested. Great question. Edith, what else we got, ma'am?
To wrap up this episode, we have a double question from Colson based out of White Plains, New York. What is the most frustrating part in doing interviews? And would you consider doing a video-based podcast?
Well, got a couple of those double questions today. Good question, Colson. So to give you some insight, sometimes it's really hard to connect. Like when I reach out for interviews, I'm looking at people within the safety profession, such as myself. I might look them up on LinkedIn or social platforms like Facebook within the groups that host, for safety individuals. But to give you a frustration, prior to me going to the Marshall Islands this year, I'd actually created what's called a stack. So it was a set of shows where I had interviewed numerous personnel. And the frustration was we recorded, I edited, got everything put together, set up a Google Drive and loaded the interviews up there so that the person that was involved in the podcast could listen to it. And then from there, determine yes or no, they wanted to re-record, give me approval to release the podcast, because you do need approval. That's somebody else's voice, and you're talking about being on your show. So I have my stack set up, and out of that stack, one was a writer who had sent me a book to read, wanted me to review it, because I love to read. There was actually talk about me reading it, doing a voiceover for individuals related to what he had written. And, I was waiting for him to give me the okay to put the episode in. And it would have broadcasted my very first week of being in the Marshall Islands. I didn't know if my equipment would work out there. I didn't know if I would have the internet capability to do interviews, upload. I knew I was going to be a day ahead because of crossing the international date line. So there were a lot of unknown factors, and so I created the stack. Well, I reached out to him, but the company that he had signed his book with was getting ready to do a promotional, and they gave him an advance pay on going out, and promoting his book. So they didn't want anything else about the book going out there, so he did not release the podcast. It's still sitting in archives, but I can never play it at this time. Probably won't be able to for the next 2 years, since that's what it's going to be with him going on tour with his book. Another gentleman that I had interviewed he got his copy. It was put in the Google Drive. He went and listened to it and then deleted it. He did not like some of the humor that was involved. And he thought that, a couple of times when I said damn and things like that, that the people at his church would have issues with it. So some of the frustrations is just not getting the consent. You think you have a good interview, you sent the right notes, you sent the right information to the person you're interviewing, and they were okay with it. But then when it comes down to the final, one of the oddest ones, the very last one that would not let me release while I was on island, thought he sounded feminine. And he thought I'd adjusted it. And so a week before I flew out to Hawaii to get to the Marshall Islands, I had an audio engineer try to increase it. And he said, you can't. The frequency of his voice, whatever type of microphone he was using, however he was connected to the Clean Feed studio is what contributed to this. So it had nothing to do with my Audacity program, any of the editing, none of that. But it was just one of those things that they became fearful that they sounded stupid. And those are some of the things that you're going to run into. Just to give you an idea, out of the 58 interview requests I sent out this year, 600 rejections. That's the other thing. You'll get rejections because they'll say, well, you don't have enough clicks, you don't have enough downloads, you don't have a sponsor, you don't have this. And they're justifying not going onto your show because, it doesn't meet their needs or what their target group is. And you'll see stuff like that. So what? Put out 2 more, put out 3 more, interview friends, go out in the middle of town. One of the things I did is I created a business card for the podcast, and I would drop them around in gas stations, grocery stores, places when I was traveling around, and people would say, hey, I found your card. What is this? What's this about? And it would strike up conversation. They'd email me, hey, I found your card out here. Did I win a prize? Things like that. And I'd be like, yes, you get to be interviewed. Don't have to pay for it. Little things along those lines to just build it up. Now, as for video segments, no. I have a face for radio, strictly for podcasting, children's horror stories, shit like that. There's 2 reasons to it, actually. Sean Ryan and all the great podcasters out there, and I'm saying Sean Ryan because I mentioned him previously, but all the great podcasters that have video, look at the length of those. I mean, to really get into an interview, to get into the individual, to get into a story or something, video is a great way to do it because most people that listen to podcasts, the audios, it's during their commute. So you're looking at maybe 30, 45 minutes because they'll pull in the driveway, finish listening to it if it's interesting or if it involves them enough. But with video, no. That person has got to be stagnant and in a single position. You don't want people watching your video while they're driving. That driver's distraction gets people killed. So you have to look at who you're reaching out to, right? So people have TikTok. If they want to watch something, they can watch clips and stuff. But no, I'll never do video. That's just no interest of mine. And it doesn't reach my target audience who want to listen at drive time or when they have 40 minutes to fuck around because on company time, they're in the shitter taking care of business, right? And getting paid for it. Great question. There are some challenges that you'll face if you ever decide to get into podcasting, but don't let it put you down. You just did not ask the right person at the right time. You will get guests if you're persistent and start off small, meaning friends, family, coworkers, people you meet, just downtown. Hey, what's your favorite place to shop? Where do you like to eat? Things like that. Make it about them. You'll always succeed. Great question. Thank you. Thank you, Edith, for helping me out with this. And before I do the closing statements, what would you like to share, ma'am? And please take your time.
Thanks to everyone for listening to today's episode on Inside the Bald Man. Please take a moment to rate or review the show on your favorite platform. and feel free to send in questions for the next session on society and culture. Please feel free to email Alan at diaryofabaldman1968@gmail.com or send it telepathically to Alan. With that big ass head, he probably has great reception.
Well, that was not exactly what I was thinking of as a closing statement, Edith, but you can bet your sweet ass you're going to be back on the show doing the question and Q&A periods with me. And I get excellent reception. By the way, I can pick up radio stations in Australia. All right, everybody, thank you for listening. As we're approaching Thanksgiving and the holidays, please consider taking care of yourself. Please consider your mental and physical well-being. It's a stressful time of year. Don't let it get to you. If you have thoughts that you're alone, you're not. There are millions of fucking people in this world. My cell phone number is 910-431-6437. If you're having a bad time and you don't want to call 988 because you're worried that they'll lock you up for like mental health awareness or something of that effect, that's not going to happen. They're going to reach out to you and speak to you and address your concerns. Take care of yourself. And again, if you're drinking, hydrate, take, the vitamins necessary to keep your liver going, because if that shit goes, the rest of you goes downhill as well. But be cognizant, there's people out there. Yes, you may be alone for a minute, but you could step outside, go to a grocery store, give me a text, I'll respond to you. You could go to church groups, you can go to social events. There's all kinds of people out there. And if you're an introvert like me, stay at home and just reach out. Enjoy the things you enjoy that make you happy. Go get you a Hungry Man meal. Get you 2 or 3 of them. Act like, well, I had to take a tray home for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Reduce the alcohol intake. If you're not properly hydrated, don't just pound them back because you're sad and you feel alone. That's your mind saying it. You don't have to be alone. But if there's other struggles and things sending you back, be peaceful with yourself. Be peaceful with others. All right? It doesn't take but a second to reach out and look for someone to be there for you, to say the things that you need to know is that you're not alone. And we're going to get up through the holidays together. All right? I love you guys. Thank you for listening. Thank you for the questions. Thank you for everybody participating. To Revoicer, my great co-host, and everybody involved. Thank you. I love you. Now get the fuck out of here and enjoy the rest of your day. Happy Thanksgiving.
Alan Woffard has produced this podcast for entertainment purposes. Neither this nor any other podcast he produced constitute legal, medical, marital, sexual, or professional advice. The opinions and views presented by Alan are his own and do not reflect the views or opinions of employers, clients, family, Facebook groupies, promotional sponsors, or baby Jesus. Any health information shared or mentioned as an alternative does not create any patient-physician relationship or other professional relationship between the audience and the presenters. No person listening to any podcast from this rocket surgeon should act or refrain from acting based on the content of a podcast without first seeking appropriate professional advice and or counseling, nor shall the information be used to substitute for professional advice and counseling. As stated earlier, this show is for entertainment purposes, not how to lead or change your life. Do what is best for you or what your spouse approves of. Alan Woffard and all guests of the show expressly disclaim all liability relating to any actions taken or not taken based on any and all contents of this site.